performed through mixed methods. This was thanks to the IISE STEM grant and the advisement of my professor, Maria. Okay, so this research had the purpose to identify the application of continuous improvement in Puerto Rico, because there is no explicit documentation of the application of continuous improvement in the service industry specifically. But why did I choose the service industry? Well, in Puerto Rico, based on the Department of Labor, the manufacturing industry has been declining in the amount of employment that it's generating each year, decreasing 13.27% from 2012 to 2022. But the service industry is increasing by 12.25% and expected to keep growing. The literature review that was performed in this research was Puerto Rico's economy and employment, continuous improvement in the service industry, and reference case studies about this type of research. So, Puerto Rico's economy, a little bit history. Puerto Rico currently has $72 billion debt. It's under reconstruction after Hurricane Maria, and by 2017, that was when this research started, we had an unemployment rate of 10.5%. So this is our representation of the downfall of the manufacturing industry of Puerto Rico. Over the years, Section 936 was a law that permitted big industries, manufacturing industries to be in the island and had tax exemptions, but they eliminated it in 1996. It had to be completely gone by 2006, and it's kept decreasing. But still, the manufacturing industry represents $2,000 million of the in income of the government, and it's represent a mean of $50,000 salary for their employees. Now, continuous improvement in the service industry, continuous improvement and its contributors. Well, Edward Deming is one of the most known. He helped the manufacturing industry in Japan to implement continuous improvement methodologies and practices, which led to Japan, manufacturing industry in Japan, be an international force in 1970s, which also helped Japan strengthen their economy. So if Japan could, why Puerto Rico can't? So that's the reason for this study. And the difficulties that the service industry confronts is quantifying the problem. Continuous improvement methodologies that were studied here were business process engineering, ISO 9000 standards, Lean Six Sigma, total quality management, and the theory of constraint. The tools, or some of the tools that are most applied in service based on the literature review was the PDCA methodology, cause and effect, control charts, and value stream mapping, and the DMIC methodology. So some of the benefits that were presented in the literature review were more income for the company, less expenses, higher employee morale, and better outcome. And some of the barriers presented were mostly when continuous improvement wasn't applied in a correct way, so it presented more bureaucratic processes, more pressure in the manager, and top management not interested in this type of process.
I did.
The methodology that was used in this research was mixed methods approach, which started with a qualitative analysis, then a quantitative analysis. So, for the purpose of this presentation, I'll be referring to big businesses and small businesses. Small businesses are the ones that have 25 or less employees. And also, I'll be talking about familiarized with continuous improvement and not familiarized with continuous improvement. Why? Well, Puerto Rico has a lot of companies in the service industry, but most of them are small companies, family-owned or professional services that maybe they don't know about the technicalities of continuous improvement, but they do it in some level. So, the qualitative analysis, it's summarized in this table. Well, continuous application in small companies, well, it's vague process. Vague process reengineering is what they most apply, and there's no actual continuous improvement culture. Now, in big companies, the ones that I interviewed for this area, and this qualitative analysis, I interviewed some small companies and big companies. Well, big company had ISO 9001 certified, process reengineering, applied Lean Six Sigma, but they also presented to have a vague Kaizen implementation. So They did case study events, but didn't in a proper way that it's mostly done. Now, the tools applied in small companies were verbal voice of the customer, no official 5S implementation, and focus groups. Now, the big companies also presented to not officially implement 5S, the 5S methodology, but they did it in their own way. Now, big companies also applied statistical tools, waste analysis, employee version of Kanbans, root cause analysis, and lean tools. In the benefits, well, for small companies, most of the time, it's just process simplification, benefits in time, and customer relationship because of the closeness they have, their management has with the customers. And in the case of big company, well, documentation improvement, benefits in time, minimizing accidents, and the reduction of waste activities. Barriers, well, the barriers for implementing continuous improvement in small companies, what they told me in these interviews were no structured business plan, funds for investment for continuous improvement projects, and time to dedicate to these improvement projects. Most of the time, the owner of the company is also the manager, and it's the employee, and it's the cashier, it's everyone at the same time. And they can also apply continuous improvement. Big companies, well, most of the time they confronted employee resistant to change, bad communication between the engineers and management with their employees, and the employees doesn't recognize continuous improvement terminologies, which also leads to bad communication. Now, for this study, 2 interviews were done to 2 Puerto Ricans economists, really important ones, and their name was Antonio Gonzalo and Jose Villamin, and they said a lot of things. Most of them, some of them were different, but they did agree on these 3 things. 1, Puerto Rico has a historic problem with the administration of its government. 2, immigration is a barrier, but also an opportunity to export products and services out of the island's market. And 3, private sector is key to stimulate Puerto Rico's economy. Now, why do I talk about government and the economy with this kind of project about continuous improvement? Well, if these companies apply continuous improvement, they can cope with this economic crisis that the island is facing, so they can keep growing and therefore help Puerto Rico's economy, using this as an opportunity to export these services out of the island. And the government is actually helping with some laws, like Act 20 and Act 22, which allows companies that are located in Puerto Rico, service companies, to export their services, and they have some tax exemptions. Act 22 allows people who make certain amount of money as an income, and allows them also some tax exemptions, and they can also make business inside the island with some benefits. Act 70 and Act 56 are other type of laws that they are doing for young entrepreneurs and Puerto Ricans to create new type of jobs and new ventures and just keep on growing their economy and their ideas. Now, laws that negatively affect, most of them were told by the small companies, were the municipal taxes on inventory, which it's just every year, all the inventory they pass taxes over it, so they try to work on a just-in-time type of methodology with their inventory. The sales tax, which sometimes for small businesses, well, the sales tax increases the cost of something very simple. So most of the people go and don't buy it there, prefer to go other place or just not buy it at all. And the federal contribute labor reform, which was a reform established by the new government in Puerto Rico. Now, in the quantitative phase, survey was sent to companies. And the methodologies that were most applied by this sample, by the whole sample, small and big, were process reengineering at 29%, theory of constraint 10%, ISO 9001 15%, Lean Six Sigma 12%, Six Sigma 5%, Lean 12%, and 17% none. Well, keep in mind that most of these businesses were small. They didn't know exactly, for example, what is Lean Six Sigma as what it's in nature, what other companies do. But I did put in the survey a little bit of an explanation of what is the nature of these type of methodologies, and then they could answer the survey and could be matched with the big businesses. So 52.63% of the small businesses are not familiarized with continuous improvement at all. And 70.37% of the survey were small businesses. Now, the classification of the barriers in the companies surveyed that are not familiarized with continuous improvement, well, most of them that are not familiarized didn't apply anything, or theory of constraint or process reengineering. Those were the ones that in nature they kind of apply. In the case of the barriers for the companies that are familiarized, they tend to do a lot of projects with process reengineering. And the other one is ISO 9001. The classification of the barriers in the company survey, these were the tools, the classification of the tools presented. Most of them apply databases, the 5S methodology, the Gemba, and projections type of like a gap analysis and stuff. So this is the whole survey, the whole sample. Now this is with the ones that are not familiarized, which most apply database, weights analysis, projections, Gemba, 5S analysis, and just in time. Most are not database because they tend to do their services like they register their customers, they already know all the information, so it's quicker for them, so that's why they tend to say database. Now, in the ones that are the barriers for this, now this one, it's the barriers of the companies, is the resistance to change from the employees. They tend to be between regular and a little. The resistance to change from the customers tends to be just a little and basically none. In the case of administrative resistance, basically it was none. In the case of economic factors, between regular and a little, and bureaucratic processes were mostly none. Now, when we classify them as people or companies that were familiarized or not familiarized with continuous improvement, we could see that most of them are none. They don't face it, or at least they say that they don't face it. This kind of service has that limitation of actually knowing if they don't do it or actually do it. So those are kind of the barriers we have with this research. We have to trust that they are saying the truth with all of this. And the classification of the benefits in the company's survey, this is the whole sample. Most of them presented. So this is the barriers for small companies, for big companies. I'm sorry, resistant to change from employees. They present a lot of resistance. They present a lot of barriers all the time. Now, in the case of the benefits, you can see that if we divide them all, most of them have regular benefits between economic savings, employee motivation, reduction in time, and customer satisfaction. Now, these are a summary of the laws that are affecting positively and negatively the Puerto Rico right now: Act 135, Medicare, professional ethics, Act 54, equal employment opportunity. And negatively, well, government bureaucracy, Act 20, sales tax, excessive amount tax of businesses, municipal and inventory. Now, future work, we only had a 17.22% rate of return, so there's still room to improve and actually get to know how the whole service industry is actually doing. This is a small part of it, mostly of small businesses. This study, there can also be a study of each service sector. They can also analyze the improvements made compared with the economic impact in the companies. Realize campaigns to educate businesses about continuous improvement, and measure the amount of companies that are receptive about these practices, and research about how to engage businesses into applying continuous improvement. These are some of the future work that is expected to be done or be able to find people to also continue this work. So these are some of the references applied in the whole research. And any questions?